In the boom of the 1960s, Toronto was on the verge of a radical transformation. Casa Loma, Kensington Market, the Annex, and other places would be sacrificed for a better future. Or that's what they said. The plan was audacious, the funding was approved, the bulldozers were already on the move. It was, for all intents and purposes, a done deal. And yet, it isn't here. The most ambitious public works project in the city's history simply vanished from the plans. This is the story of how a city on the brink of a concrete future suddenly and violently changed its mind. This is the story of the Spadina Expressway. To understand the Spadina Expressway, we must first understand the era in which it was conceived. The 1950s and 60s were a transformative period for North America, and Toronto was no exception. Post-World War II prosperity fueled an explosion of suburban growth. The car, once a luxury, became a necessity, a symbol of freedom, progress, and the burgeoning middle-class lifestyle. Toronto's population was swelling. People were moving out of the dense urban core into new sprawling communities, in what would become Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, and beyond. This created a new problem for city planners. How to get these suburban commuters into the downtown financial district and then home again, quickly and efficiently. The prevailing solution, championed by urban planners and engineers across the continent, was simple. Build more roads, bigger roads, faster roads, expressways. The logic was irresistible. More lanes, less congestion. In Toronto, this era saw the construction of major arteries like the Gardiner Expressway, slicing along the waterfront, and Highway 401, a massive east-west corridor. These were seen as vital for the city's economic engine, connecting goods and people. The dream of a network of such highways, radiating from the city center, seemed not just logical, but inevitable. The Metropolitan Toronto Planning Board, created in 1953, was tasked with coordinating the growth of the newly federated Metro Toronto, a supercity of 13 municipalities. Their vision was grand and heavily influenced by the automobile. The 1959 official plan for Metro Toronto laid out a comprehensive network of expressways designed to crisscross the city. The most prominent among these, aimed directly at the city's academic and financial heart, was the Spadina Expressway. The proposed route was ambitious and for many alarming. It would begin north of Highway 401, where it would pick up suburban traffic, then cut directly south, running between the affluent neighborhoods of Forest Hill and Homewood. Then, it would continue southeast, past Casa Loma, before joining the Spadina corridor, slicing directly through the heart of the Annex, one of Toronto's most cherished and historic neighborhoods. It would end after an 8-mile journey at Bloor Street, or even further south at Harbord Street, funneling thousands of cars directly into the University of Toronto campus. The plan called for 6 lanes of traffic, with multiple interchanges, including a massive one proposed for the area around Casa Loma. It would require the demolition of hundreds of homes, the destruction of major parkland, and a fundamental reshaping of communities. To the planners, these were acceptable sacrifices for efficiency and progress. To those who lived in its path, it was an existential threat. As the plans for the Spadina Expressway solidified, a murmur of discontent began to grow. It started quietly, in living rooms and community meetings, among the residents who would lose their homes or see their neighborhoods irrevocably altered. But soon, that murmur would swell into a roar. The first major segment of the expressway, from Highway 401 south to Lawrence Avenue, began construction in 1966. This section, initially called the Spadina Expressway, is what we know as the William R. Allen Road, or simply the Allen. As the concrete pylons rose and the bulldozers cleared swaths of land, the reality of the expressway began to sink in. The opposition wasn't initially unified. It was a collection of concerned citizens, each fighting for their own patch of green space or their own street. But slowly, disparate groups began to connect. They realized they were not just fighting for local issues. They were fighting a common enemy, a monolithic government plan that seemed impervious to public input. One of the earliest and most passionate voices came from the University of Toronto, whose campus would be directly impacted. Students and faculty became increasingly vocal, but the true turning point, the sparks that ignited a citywide movement, came from the residents of the Annex. The Annex, with its beautiful Victorian homes, mature trees, and vibrant community, was directly in the expressway's path. Here, a new resident had recently arrived, and she would prove to be the movement's most powerful intellectual force. Her name was Jane Jacobs. Jane Jacobs was not an urban planner by training, but her 1961 book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, had already revolutionized thinking about urban planning worldwide. She was a scathing critic of the post-war trend of urban renewal that saw planners demolish vibrant neighborhoods for highways and high-rises. Jacobs championed dense, mixed-use, walkable streets, local commerce, and the ballad of the sidewalks, the spontaneous, intricate life of a healthy neighborhood. Her argument was profound and simple. Cities are not machines to be optimized for cars. They are complex organisms that thrive on human interaction and diversity. Highways, she argued, kill cities. They create dead zones, sever connections, and prioritize speed over life. The Spadina Expressway, to Jacobs, was a textbook example of everything that was wrong with modern urban planning. And you can hear it in her own words.
Probably the biggest single menace to Toronto right now is the Spadina Expressway. The minute you take an expressway into, not up to, but into the dense part of the city, then you have very large numbers of cars coming on and going off at certain restricted points.
Jacobs' presence in Toronto, and specifically in the Annex, galvanized the opposition. Her home, on Albany Avenue, became a de facto headquarters for the Stop Spadina Committee, a grassroots organization that would unite the disparate voices of dissent into a formidable political force. The committee brought together an eclectic mix of people and used every tool at their disposal: petitions, public meetings, political lobbying, and good old-fashioned activism. They created iconic protest signs, emblazoned with slogans like "Stop Spadina, Save Our City." As the 1960s drew to a close, the Spadina Expressway became the defining issue in Toronto politics. The Stop Spadina Committee understood that direct action and public awareness were crucial, but ultimately, the decision would be made in the halls of power. They needed to influence the ballot box. The pro-expressway lobby was powerful. Developers, construction companies, and many suburban politicians saw the highway as an essential for economic growth and easing congestion. They argued that the elitist downtown residents were selfishly blocking progress that would benefit the entire region. The provincial government, under the leadership of Premier John Roberts, was also generally in favor of the expressway, viewing it as a critical piece of infrastructure. But the anti-expressway movement was gaining momentum. In the 1969 municipal election, the Stop Spadina Committee actively campaigned for candidates who opposed the expressway, successfully electing several of them. The political landscape was shifting. The Reform Council, elected in 1969 and further strengthened in 1972, began to challenge the traditional approach to urban development. They questioned the unchecked power of developers and the car-centric vision of the city. The Spadina Expressway became a symbol of this larger philosophical battle. The crucial decision, however, rested not with Toronto City Council, but with the provincial government of Ontario. The province was funding a significant portion of the expressway, and without their approval and financial commitment, the project could not proceed. In 1971, William Bill Davis, a relatively new face, became the Premier of Ontario. Davis inherited a provincial cabinet deeply divided on the issue of the Spadina Expressway. Some powerful ministers, representing suburban ridings, were firmly pro-highway. Others, particularly those sensitive to growing environmental and urban concerns, were wavering. The Stop Spadina Committee launched its most intense lobbying efforts. They presented their arguments directly to Premier Davis and his cabinet. They highlighted the financial costs, the environmental damage, and the social disruption. They pointed to the successful public transit alternatives, particularly the Spadina subway line, which was already under construction and offered a less destructive way to move people. The pressure on Davis was immense. He understood the political and economic implications of either decision. To proceed would alienate a vocal and increasingly powerful urban constituency. To cancel would anger powerful business interests and many suburban voters. The debate raged for weeks within the cabinet. It wasn't just about a highway anymore. It was about the future direction of the province's largest city. It was a testament of whether grassroots activism could truly challenge the entrenched interests of government and industry. Finally, on June 3, 1971, Premier Bill Davis stood before the press to announce his government's decision. What he said next would forever change the course of Toronto's history. We must make a decision as to whether we are trying to build a transportation system to serve the automobile or one which will best serve people. If we are building a transportation system to serve the automobile, the Spadina Expressway would be a good place to start. But if we're building a transportation system to serve people, the Spadina Expressway is a good place to stop. It was a mic drop moment, a stunning, unexpected victory for the citizens' movement. The seemingly inevitable highway, the symbol of unchecked progress, had been halted by the sheer will of the people. It was a victory for communities, for urban livability, and for a different vision of the city. The cancellation of the Spadina Expressway was more than just a defeat of a single project. It was a watershed moment that profoundly reshaped Toronto's physical and philosophical landscape. Its legacy is still visible everywhere you look, from the roads we drive to the principles that guide our urban planning today. The most obvious physical legacy is the Allen Road itself, an expressway that ends in the middle of a neighborhood. It stands as a concrete monument to a future that never arrived, a permanent reminder of the decision made in 1971. But where the expressway would have gone, something else rose. The funds earmarked for the southern half of Spadina Expressway were, in part, diverted to extend the Spadina subway line. Instead of a concrete trench carrying cars, a vibrant, artistic subway line emerged, serving millions of commuters and connecting communities. It's a powerful statement. Public transit, not private automobiles, would define this part of the city's future. Neighborhoods like the Annex, Forest Hill, and Kensington Market, which would have been bisected or destroyed, remain intact. Their tree-lined streets, historic homes, and vibrant street life were preserved. Parks like the Cedarvale Ravine, once slated for expressway ramps, remain green spaces for people to enjoy. The victory was not without its critics. For years, some argued that cancelling the Spadina Expressway exacerbated traffic congestion and made commuting harder for those in the northern suburbs. But what is undeniable is that the decision shaped a fundamental aspect of Toronto's character. Imagine, just for a moment, an alternate Toronto. A Toronto where a 6-lane expressway barreled through the Annex, where Casa Loma was overshadowed by concrete ramps, and where Spadina Avenue was a highway, not a vibrant artery of shops and streetcars. It would be a profoundly different place. The Spadina Expressway never reached its intended destination, but the battle to stop it reached deep into the heart of Toronto, leaving an indelible mark that continues to define the city we know today. It stands as a powerful testament to the idea that a city's future is not just built by engineers and politicians, but by the collective will of its people. If you like this type of content and would like to learn more about the environment that surrounds us, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to this channel. Stay tuned for more!